Good evening, everyone. We're going to talk quickly about Tony Menendez and Halliburton, the whistleblowing case, how Tony fought Halliburton and won. Who are the players in this case? Tony Menendez is the former director of technical accounting research and training at Halliburton, and Mark McCollum, chief accounting officer at Halliburton and Tony's boss in this case. So what went down? So Tony, the history here, Tony recognized a bill and hold sales situation going on at Halliburton, where the company would bill customers and recognize revenue before providing equipment to the customers. He was asked to approve one of these bill and hold sales in 2005. And he spent months and a lot of time researching and debating this issue to see if there was any reason he could justify this bill and hold sale being okay. But he could not find one. And Tony talked to his boss, Mark McCollum, and other top Halliburton executives, and they agreed that with Tony's conclusion that this bill and hold sale was not an acceptable way to account for these kind of to account at Halliburton. But the executives were reluctant to do anything about it or change anything because it would be embarrassing for the company to have to go back and correct these sales. They've been doing similar bill and hold sales for a long time prior to Tony. So Tony eventually filed a confidential complaint with the SEC in November of 2005. And in February 2006, he alerted the audit committee of the bill and hold sale issue. And 4 days later, Mark McCollum, so Tony's boss, sent an email to Halliburton executives letting them know that the SEC had opened an investigation into Halliburton because of Tony's allegations. So how did Tony do in terms of implementing the IMA steps for resolution of ethical conduct? Those steps are: discuss the issue with your immediate supervisor, clarify the relevant ethical issues by initiating a confidential discussion with an IMA ethics counselor or other impartial advisor, and third, consult your own attorney as to legal obligations and rights concerning the ethical conflict. So Tony did talk about the matter with his supervisor, Mark McCollum, who agreed with him initially, if you'll remember, but was reluctant to do anything and eventually turned on Tony and outed him as a whistleblower. I'm not aware if Tony had any kind of confidential discussion with an IMA ethics counselor or other advisor, but I like to think that he would have talked to some other advisor and his own attorney before launching that confidential complaint. Joseph Badaracco has a good article called "We Don't Need Another Hero," and he talks about a few principles of effective ethical leaders. Those ethical leaders put things off until tomorrow. They pick their own battles. They bend the rules and don't break them, and they find a compromise. That's what Joseph Badaracco found. So Tony, I believe, did put things off until tomorrow because he did spend months researching and debating the issue of bill and hold sales, trying to determine if there's any other way that they could account for these. On the subject of picking battles, I do think he did follow this principle in part as he went to his boss and other executives to talk about this issue, and they did agree. Unfortunately, they didn't do anything and had no action afterwards. And when nothing was done, he did launch the confidential complaint and notify the audit committee. In my mind, I would have liked to have seen Tony alert the audit committee before going to the SEC. I don't think that Tony had an opportunity to bend the rules because he was unable to find any other way to do this type of bill and hold sale and keep everybody happy. But perhaps he could have kept some more firm pressure on Mark McCollum and eventually get executives to agree to make the corrections that were necessary to fix this issue so that Tony could feel good about what he was doing at Halliburton. That's the summary of this case, this whistleblowing case with Tony Menendez and Halliburton. I think that he did follow some of these principles of the IMA ethics steps, as well as Joe Badaracco's principles of ethical leaders. But I think there was some things that he probably would have done differently if he had an opportunity to go back. Eventually, Tony did get a small settlement from fighting this whistleblowing case. But these are the facts, and I appreciate your time listening to this short summary of the Halliburton whistleblowing case. Have a great night.